All right. Good evening, good afternoon, everywhere, all around the world, colleagues and scholars. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the African Diaspora Research and Research Center's monthly seminar series. We are happy to have you join us. Of course, the ADRRC, as we call ourselves for short, it's a product of collaboration between University of Ibadan and then also Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, and has been designated TED Fund Center of Excellence for Diaspora Studies, which is dedicated to examining research, policy engagement issues, and capacity building around African diaspora and transnational issues. So our work is at the intersection of policy, of practice, and also of scholarship. And we basically try to, bridge the gap between those who do policy work and also do research, in ways that actually advance real conversations in the world. So for us to have everyone join us, I mean, this is our third edition. It's been really interesting. But what we find interesting about the talk for today is also about trying to tilt the conversation, in a way that call our attention to things that have been ignored, more generally when we talk about diaspora. So a lot of talk around diaspora when we talk about in Nigeria and African context that we are always looking outward. We're always, looking at our migrants, African migrants going to other places around the world. When in fact, Africa also hosts a lot of diaspora communities, and the history, as one of the authors of a book that was written by members of the Nigerwives that we're going to be talking about today, they said that the history of Nigeria is also about the history of these migrant communities. Particularly here, we're focusing on women. So we are really excited about this to actually open up a conversation about very important aspects of the work that we are interested in doing as a research center, to begin to look closely how we might begin to talk about diaspora and development, diaspora and homeland development in particular, by also looking inward and looking at the communities who have also been building and, have been part of the story around Nigeria's international image and all of that. I wouldn't want to go into the very exciting conversations that our guest for today, Dr. Helen Chatburn-Ojehomon, will be sharing. So, but it's just to say welcome to everyone. So today's lecture is titled, or I would say seminar, I don't want to call it lecture. So it's titled Nigerwives, Evolution and Lived Experiences of a Diasporic Women's Association in Nigeria. And we are very excited to host Dr. Helen Chatburn-Ojehomon. I have mentioned her name before. She's Canadian and she's an educator, a researcher, and also a school leader who has lived and worked in Nigeria for over 20 years. And before I go ahead to read a short bio of our speaker for today, I would like to basically explain what the structure of our conversation would be. So she is going to talk to us for 30 minutes, and following that talk, we would invite contributions from those who are attending online. Of course, we'll try to take live questions, but if you will be so kind to also try to leave your comments, your questions in the comment section, that would help us really greatly. So that is the first item that I'm getting off the way. We'll make sure to get as many comments and feedback as much as possible. Now, of course, in reading the bio of our guest speaker today, I should say that on behalf of the director of our center, we apologize that he's not here to welcome everyone like he would usually do. But I think it allows us to have more time today to talk. But do know that he's here with us in spirit, and he would have opportunity to read all of this. So to the bio. I'll say Dr. Helen Chatburn, of course, Ojehomon is she's currently serving as the deputy head of school at Ibadan International School, and recently completed her doctoral research of education in international education leadership and policy program at Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, University of Toronto. Her research and professional interests include international education, educational leadership and policy, teacher agency, belonging, and institutional development. She is also the immediate past national president of Nigerwives, Nigeria, a registered non-profit association of foreign-born women married to Nigerians that promotes cultural understanding, friendship, charitable service, and advocacy on immigration and citizenship issues affecting transnational families. It would also please you to know that she served between 2021 and 2025 as national president of this association and leading the association through a period of renewal, transition, and organizational reflection. Today, she's going to be drawing on her lived experience as a Canadian woman married to a Nigerian, a long-term resident in Nigeria, and her leadership within Nigerwives to bring a personal and scholarly perspective to questions of diaspora identity, belonging, and women's community building, and the role of civil society organization generally in contemporary Nigeria. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Helen Chatburn-Ojehomon to give a talk. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kudus. Really appreciate the invitation. And I know I've had a lot of enriching conversations with you before, and I hope that this will be an enriching conversation for everybody who is here. Before I start, I just want to mention that I definitely have over 2 decades of membership of Nigerwives Nigeria. I've been a branch officer, a national president, and now I'm the immediate national president. Today, I'm just giving my own views according to my own lived experience of being part of this association, and of course, being someone who has lived in Nigeria, married to a Nigerian for 20 plus years. And although I'm not currently in Nigeria right now, it is my primary residence, and I live and work in Nigeria, as you've mentioned. So with that said, I'll just give a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about today. I think it's good that I'll tell you a little bit about myself and also the origins of Nigerwives Nigeria, the association. And then I want to talk about how we build community and identity, what kind of advocacy has brought us together. And then I'll give some reflections on negotiation of culture as a diasporic person who's living in Nigeria. So here I am. As Dr. Kudus has said, I'm Dr. Helen Chatburn-Ojehomon. I want to start with my own personal journey because many times when I am presenting in Nigeria, people are very curious about my name, my surname. People are curious about where I'm from. And I think that sometimes they're wondering about that so much that they are thinking about that first and foremost when they see me, because of course, race, gender, identity, these things are visible, they show on the body. And I am here as an embodied person talking to you today. So my name's Helen. I came to Nigeria in the early 2000s. What brought me to Nigeria? Well, I had finished some postgraduate education. My focus was on international development at the time. And I got a short-term contract to come to Nigeria to work at an NGO a human rights education NGO based in Ibadan for just 3 months. So I came as a volunteer, an overseas volunteer, a very short-term contract. I knew nothing about Nigeria. I really didn't even research Nigeria before I got on the plane. I had read a few books by Ben Okri and some other Nigerian authors, works of fiction, and that was about the extent of my knowledge. So when I arrived in Nigeria, I had a fantastic guide, a powerful woman leader who escorted me to Ibadan from Abuja. And then I settled down my new life living in a community in kind of the inners of Ibadan. I didn't see any other identifiable foreigners to me, any other white people, for about 2 months. And that was the first time that that had ever really happened to me. So I felt a lot of culture shock. I felt really alone at that time. And I was also, my first impressions of living in Nigeria were that it was a huge challenge for me. Everything was difficult. And on top of that, the issues of me looking so different, when I would go on a bus, I took public transport at the time. People would touch my hair. There was a language barrier that was very major for me. It was difficult to overcome. And everything did seem very chaotic to me. Later I learned what the order was within what appeared to be chaotic. And after I kind of felt that understanding, that I was able to independently get around the town by myself, then I felt a lot more secure in Ibadan and I felt a lot more at ease. So I was working at a human rights NGO. I later met my husband, who was also volunteering there at the time, and later decided to start a life in Ibadan, which I did. And then I was introduced one day to Nigerwives when I was in a bookshop, and an African Nigerwife approached me from Tanzania, and she said, "Oh, do you know about Nigerwives?" I was a bit reluctant, but for some reason, I got into her car. She took me around. We became fast friends and took a leap of faith, I guess. And I became a member of this association called Nigerwives Nigeria. So why Nigerwives? Why is there an association called Nigerwives Nigeria? What do we do? And how did we start? Let me give you a little bit of background about that. According to Nigerwives Nigeria, which is a formal association, then any foreign woman who's married or has been married to a Nigerian and who is permanently resident in Nigeria can be registered as a member of this association. Nigerwives Nigeria is a formal association, a membership association. There are over 400 members across Nigeria right now, but there are many more Nigerwives who reside in Nigeria who are not practicing members, or who are perhaps more transient members who come and go depending on where they are in their life cycle. And Nigerwives Nigeria is a bit confusing sometimes to people because there is also an immigration status called a Nigerwife status in Nigeria. So Nigerwives Nigeria, the association, is not to be mistaken for the immigration status of being a Nigerwife, someone who's married to a Nigerian, even though there's some overlap between those two, which I'll talk about in a moment. So the earliest Nigerwife who was a member is a lady named Audrey Ajose. So this is not her. This is her daughter, who's pictured here on the screen. And Audrey came to Nigeria in 1936. She's the first Nigerwife who we know of within our association. And from that time, of course, she was Lagos-based and she had many friends. But later, in the 1960s and 70s, then these women began meeting and organizing in a slightly more formal way, typically around issues pertaining to their employment and their status as having to come and go to Nigeria. So basically their immigration status. In 1987, the association became formally recognized by the Nigerian CAC, the Corporate Affairs Commission. And today we have over 200 members. We have 15 separate branches, and we have associate memberships in other countries where Nigerwives who were formerly resident in Nigeria have gone back to their home countries, and they continue to meet with their sisters in their home countries like the UK or the US. So Nigerwives Nigeria follows a very formal institutional structure. We have a Nigerwives Central Council, which makes the major decisions of the association, and that is formed of the National Executive Committee. It's a 7-woman committee. We have trustees. We are a trustee incorporated association. And then we have branch delegates from all of our 15 branches. They come together every year and make decisions in our annual general meetings in a group which we call the Central Council. So aside from the national executive, then there are also branch executives across the country. There's typically one per state, but sometimes that changes and has changed over time. So in the history of our association, I see that at some points we had over 20 different branches. Right now we have 15. The aims of the association, I won't read out all of the aims, but there are basically 3 separate categories of aims. The first is to provide a support group for integration and support of our members to help each other out and to develop belonging. And then the second one is to improve members' legal position. And then the third is to benefit the community. So those 3 aims, providing support, improving members' legal status, and benefiting the community, are really the key goals of the association. So we do that through building belonging, and we have several mechanisms that we use within the association to build that belonging. So I'll just tell you about a few of them. First of all, as I mentioned, we have annual general meetings of all of the members. So members and the delegates of each branch, they come together, as well as the trustees and the National Executive Committee. We have a formal business meeting where we make decisions. Decisions range from sometimes we recently reviewed our constitution, so there were a lot of discussions about who should be a Nigerwife and if we should expand that definition to include Niger children, for example. Children of Nigerwives, should they be allowed to be members? We decided they should not, that they should continue to have their own associations and meet separately. And we also, during these meetings, discuss immigration issues, disseminate information about our status to members. And we also, of course, have fun together and meet each other and renew friendships with our sisters who are living across the country. Our AGMs, our annual general meetings, are very important. We've been hosting them for, around 40 years, perhaps a bit more. And as Nigerwives is a fairly old and well-established association. And so recently we've started meeting online every other year as a response to some of the current security and economic situations in Nigeria that are making it a bit more difficult for us to have our annual gatherings. But as you can see, the association has been all over the country and very steadily meeting for many, many years now, decades. So we also have our Nigerwives song, which we sing during our branch meetings and also during our annual general meeting. And just like our aims in providing support and service to the community, benefiting to the community and everything, then our song kind of represents that. So, we sing sharing our lives, joining hands, we are one. In all things we do our best. That's important in Nigerwives, to put your best forward, to try hard, and also strong to serve. We really have this idea of service to the community, that we are members of the community. We receive a lot from our community in Nigeria, and we also want to give back to it. And of course, sistership. Sistership is a very important idea in Nigerwives. You know, sometimes when there are conflicts, then we will repeat these lines to each other, you know, sisters all, reminding ourselves that we do have something in common. Most times when I was national president, then I would remind people that we are an association of women who are married to Nigerians. You know, our association is about love. We are here for love, you know, so in everything we should act in that love as well. Another way that we develop community is through our annual newsletter. We tried having a electronic newsletter, but our association is quite old, and many of our members are elderly as well. So we discovered that our membership does like to have a physical newsletter, so we take a lot of time to develop that every year. So here are some of our recent newsletter covers, which sort of hint towards some of the symbols and some of the important aspects of Nigerwives. So you can see in the 2022 cover, then these were, this design was a kind of Afrocentric design where we were thinking about fabrics and how fabric materials are very important to us here in our lives in Nigeria, and how it sort of symbolizes us coming together and things like that. So that's an Ankara kind of design. And then the 2024 cover this is some cover art that was designed by a child with special needs who is an artist, and one of our members has a art gallery in Lagos that's for children's work, and the artist allowed us to use this image, which sort of spoke to me the advocacy work that we do in Nigerwives. And sometimes we do speak on behalf of people whose rights are not being recognized, our members that is. And so this image sort of spoke that to me. And then the last one, the 2025 national newsletter, is our imaginings of our logo redesigned using AI, but using different themes, you know. So just for fun, but also as a record of what's happening during the times and how AI is coming into our lives as well. So one thing that brings us together is shared struggles over time. And I think that immigration advocacy, I think it's been an institutional glue that has made sure that we stick together over the years. So I'll just give you a brief overview of that. In our pre-association history, then of course there were legal kind of ecosystems and environment that affected Nigerwives. During that time, then sometimes women who are married to Nigerians were at a major disadvantage, and sometimes we received special privileges. So during the pre-association history, we were aware of some of the struggles that were affecting our members, but we weren't extremely organized until the late 70s and the early 80s, and in the 80s then we became fully recognized as an association. So that gave us a much stronger legal standing, which is what we still enjoy now. So the mid-90s were definitely colored by employment issues. Nigerwives were fighting to receive the same benefits as quote-unquote expatriates. I don't always like to use that word because I think it's kind of racially charged in a way that needs to be unpacked a bit more. But Nigerwives were treated differently as foreigners working in Nigeria and receiving lower pay, receiving less benefits, and things like that. So in the mid 90s, there was quite a bit of organizing around that, and also around pensions for those who were working for the Nigerian government who had naturalized, taken on Nigerian citizenship, and making sure that they were going to be able to access their pensions, especially for those who worked in the universities at the time. And then in 1999, Nigerwives were in quite a strong position during that transition to democracy. We were invited to contribute to the constitution with Obasanjo, and Nigerwives were able to include and advocate for some recognition of our status in the Nigerian constitution at that time. And then in the early 2000s, we experienced a very big challenge with the introduction of SERPAC, which is a Nigerian policy and legal framework around expatriates, which that's the word that Nigerian government uses, working in Nigeria. So suddenly Nigerwives were lumped into the expatriate policy framework, and that was not acceptable to Nigerwives at the time. It wasn't acceptable to their husbands. So we eventually took action, and we were known for many years in the Nigerian Immigration Service as, oh, the people who took us to court, the people who took the NIS to court. So Nigerwives, their husbands actually, took the NIS and the Controller General, or the equivalent of the Controller General at the time, to court, and won two major victories in 2003 and 2005, where it was ruled that it was unconstitutional to put restrictions on movement on Nigerwives because it impacted their husbands' freedom of family life and freedom of marriage, which were enshrined in the Constitution. So that happened in the early 2000s. And after that, Nigerwives started enjoying a little bit more freedom of movement, but slowly over time in this century, then those rights seem to have been sort of challenged, especially in 2015 when re-entry visas were abolished in Nigeria. And since then, there's a period of immigration reform in Nigeria that's impacting Nigerwives. And there's also the global immigration context where, due to globalization and other forces, Nigerwives and other immigrants are experiencing different pressures nowadays, which Nigerwives is still working on and advocating for our members. So remember that another one of our key aims is to benefit the community. So we do that in two key ways. The first is to provide welfare for our members during times of struggle. We provide financial assistance to our members, just like any other extended family or groups might do in Nigeria. And we also celebrate during big life events with our members. And we also have several projects. Our biggest project is the Nigerwives Braille Book Production Center. These are some recent renovations of that center, but the work is basically a project that it's our national project we've adopted, which we support. All branches support this project. We produce Braille books for the visually impaired, and through this, the production center, then we also provide training for visually impaired people and reading kits, math kits for visually impaired children in special schools all across the country. So we've been doing that work for many decades as well. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. So I'll just talk about some of the of negotiating identity that we experience, or that I personally experience, and some kind of trends that I've experienced and seen or perceived during my time as a long-term member of Nigerwives and also the leader. And I think that this is something that comes to mind a lot. Belonging is continually negotiated rather than achieved once and for all. And it can be a very difficult pill to swallow as a foreigner living in Nigeria, as a foreign wife living in Nigeria. But I think that that is definitely the reality for many of us. We sometimes reach out to other diasporic women's groups. For example, in 2022, I led an exchange with the Association of Foreign Wives of Japanese and Nigerwives. We had an online cultural exchange, and we really saw that there were so many similarities in how our associations were experiencing interracial marriages, living in a foreign country, and also experiencing the association. So some of the key connections and similarities were, first of all, intergenerational power struggles. Older generations of the association really feeling like a reluctance to hand over leadership power to a younger generation, and also them really wanting to make sure that the history of the association and all the struggles that they had experienced were never lost, and things like that. So we found that that was a very interesting commonality. We also both experienced changing migration patterns, and I think that that impacts kind of the demographics of the associations over time. And there were periods where we just wondered, where are all the Nigerwives? Nobody knew was coming, and then we have periods where we have many new Nigerwives coming at once and things like that. So I think that that goes along with global changes in migration patterns and things like that too. And then also, of course, employment patterns. As employment shifts, then the dynamics change as well, and the international dynamics. You can. I feel. I personally experience in the past few years, especially with international politics around immigration being what they are. More backlash as a foreigner, like a very obvious foreigner living in Nigeria, than I've ever experienced before in the past few years. So that's interesting. And but don't worry. I recognize that belonging is something that we are constantly mediating. We're constantly working towards. It's not something that's achieved. So there's that context there. And then I think that social media and exposure has really changed some of the dynamics within the associations. Of course, intercultural marriage dynamics. Intercultural marriage means constant negotiations around family, around health, what it means to be healthy, what healthcare means, what care means, which cultures surface during which times of the life, and ideas of community, intimacy and love, and of course death too. And I think race, age, motherhood, all of these are factors that impact our experiences in intercultural marriages, and also our experiences of intercultural parenting. So sometimes, as national president of Nigerwives Nigeria, then I felt that it might be more powerful for us when we are advocating with policymakers to remind everyone that we are not just wives, we are mothers too, because we experience that a motherhood could be sometimes more powerful than a wifehood in the Nigerian context at times. So, just some of my personal thoughts on that. And just a few final reflections on what this kind of diasporic women's organizing and associations might teach us, or what some things that we could think about. I feel that, like I said, creating belonging is an ongoing process, and we do it in Nigerwives Nigeria through shared traditions, being there for each other, having monthly meetings, having those spaces where people can feel safe and loved and feel a sense of family, which they otherwise might not get because they have left their families. And then I think it's also about transforming the private struggles into collective advocacy that can be very powerful when we understand that if I'm experiencing some inequity or some injustice in terms of my own in immigration status, bringing that to the collective can be very powerful and a good way to connect us. And Nigerwives has also always been about serving the wider community. I don't know, that could be maybe something that would be very interesting to talk about. Where does that come from? What does that mean? What's the significance? And but it's part of the institution. And I think preserving institutional memory is, again, something that's very important, and a connection we found with the Japanese wives is that it's very important to preserve the struggles of those who came before us within the institution, while also recognizing that the struggles of the women and the wives who are here today are also extremely valid and also something that they're experiencing in the now. And of course, continuously regenerating or renegotiating identity across generations and cultures is something that is just part of the association that we constantly have to do, and that can be a lot of work. Nigerwives is an extremely diverse association. We have around 70 different nationalities. I shared my story about how I came to Nigeria. That's just one story. There are many others, as many members there are individual stories. Sure, there are some clusterings or some trends, but it's of course very individualized as well and very diverse. And African Nigerwives and non-African Nigerwives also, although we share so much in common, then negotiating race and Africanism is also something that makes us different as well, and have different viewpoints and things like that. Intergenerational ups and downs are always there. And all of that. So I think that I'm going to leave my slideshow here and then open the floor for a discussion. Hopefully that was interesting to you, and I look forward to responding to your questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ojehomon. Sorry, the compound name, is quietly trying to be tough on me. But thank you so much. I think I really enjoyed listening to this, and I'm sure that our other members have also enjoyed listening. Of course, we have the comment section open for questions and comments. We'll take a couple of live as well. But for me, I think your presentation has done very impressive work in trying to show this community that a lot of us actually came upon by chance. And I think the community that you've talked about really sort of exposes the universal nature of immigration issues, and challenging. And I think from where I see it, I think it challenges this innocence of Nigeria and possibly other African countries when it comes to immigrant structural exclusion in general. And I think we can begin to see all these connections and the way that you also reflected on the program with the Niger or the Japanese wives, or I think it brings a lot of commonality into the way we think about issue of spouses and all of that. And for me, because I've done a lot of work looking at interracial marriages in the context of China, particularly focusing on Nigerians married to Chinese people. And so I see these similarities. But some of the questions that come into my mind is these. And I want to put them forward before we begin to take questions from the audience. The way you talk about your organization's work in terms of advocacy around immigration issues. I'm wondering what challenges you encountered in pursuit of this immigration policy changes, especially because you were part of that process at that period that all of this advocacy work was happening. That is one. I'm also curious about whether you could talk a bit more about the Niger children of Nigerwives. That other community that is being formed, and trying to understand when it was established. A bit more about the motivation behind the establishment of this and the kind of community you think they have managed to build or that they are building in Nigeria, including how they navigate integration, despite creating this exclusive community for themselves, as children of immigrants married to Nigerians. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm wondering if you want to start off on that, and then while we wait on other people. So you can raise your hand if you want to speak, but please use the comment section to also leave your questions and observations. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So to speak to your first question about challenges in immigration advocacy, where to start? There are so many. We can see that the Nigerian Immigration Service is undergoing some major reforms right now, and they have been for the past few years in terms of digitalization of their services, and also there's some aging out of officers and things like that, and I think that that's causing some new dynamics as well, as a younger generation of people enter the workforce in Nigeria. And I think that that's actually a general trend that you can see. The first generation of Nigerians who grew up or who went to school under democracy is entering the workforce now, who fully educated, thinking about ideas of democratic leadership, representation, personal agency, and things like that. And I think they bring that to the work now. So as younger people enter the workforce, I think that there is some institutional reform that's happening in Nigeria, slowly as a result of the education system having slightly changed over time and things like that. So I think that there's quite a bit more awareness of rights and individual agency and things like that now within immigration reform that probably weren't there 20 years ago or even 15 years ago. I think also there are challenges in advocacy work because, like you rightly said about the center, operating in this place between policy and practice. That is where regular people experience institutions and governments and things like that. And so Nigerwives experiences that all the time. We may have something in policy, but the practice is where it happens. Do the practitioners implement the policy the way it's supposed to be implemented? Not always. So how do individuals and how do groups, organized people, negotiate that? That's a question that we ask in Nigerwives. And so one of the challenges that we experience is dealing with individual officers. So a lot of times we we let people know, like, you cannot just say that these are our rights, we have these, we won these court cases, you have to let us do this. No. So there's a lot of advocacy that individuals have to do in their approach and things like that. So we tended to try to educate Niger wives about that as well. And also, Niger wives don't, unlike other immigrants, perhaps, Niger wives also have to have, they're sort of like, they're in a situation where they're sponsored, so that you have to go with your husband, you have to, appear with your children if you're separated or divorced, or if you're a widow, and things like that. So there's like a male force that has to follow you as a Niger wife to participate, like when you're advocating for yourself for immigration. And we also do that at the national level. Like if we're working, directly at the ministry or something like that, then we will make sure that we include husbands or other strong advocates of our group as well. So, in Nigeria as well, and it's only recently that married women, Nigerian wives who are married to a Nigerian also had to get their husband's permission to get passports and things like that. Those are there's some recent gendered rules and regulations that are being reviewed now. So those also affect Niger wives as well, all of that. I think the other thing is that, like when you're talking about that policy and practice divide, you have to work up and you have to work down. You have to make sure that you are also working with the policy implementers, not just the policy makers, when you're doing advocacy work. But that is Dr. Helen's opinion, and it's not shared by everyone. So when you're doing advocacy work at an institutional or on behalf of an organization, you have to negotiate also the understanding of how to do that work within the association so that you can get the approach right. Yeah, so it's extremely challenging, and those are some of the challenges that we faced. In terms of the Niger children, I can just speak about that very briefly, because we don't have too much overlap between Niger wives and Niger children. I don't think that they are formally organized in the same way that Nigerwives is a formal association. But certainly, it's important to many Nigerwives that their kids know each other, that they understand that there's a commonality that they share, that they should be able to see each other as brothers and sisters too. I think that's quite important to many Nigerwives, not all, but the experience of being an interracial person an interracial Nigerian living in Nigeria is certainly one that joins people together. I feel.
Okay, thank you very much for your comprehensive response. But we have a couple of questions from audience members, so I'm going to take a few of them now. So the first one that I'm going to read out is from Tolu Osayomi, and he's saying that, I'm reading him now. I'm also curious about Nigerian women married to foreign men, but all of whom live here in Nigeria. Is there Niger Husband Association? If there isn't, do you think that there is some barrier to men organizing more than women's? That's first one. And then second is asking about how expensive is Niger Wives in terms of accepting membership from every country. For example, Chadian, Cameroonian, Ghanaian women included. I asked this question against the backdrop of the politics of defining who, what, and who a diaspora is in the Nigerian diaspora policy space.
Okay, let me take those both really quickly. So first, Nigerwives is not exclusive. We don't exclude African nationals or at all. So as long as you have a nationality that's not Nigerian, you can become a Niger wife. There's no fees or anything like that that apply differently. We don't charge a higher membership, the further away from Nigeria you were born or something like that. Not at all. The whole idea is that there should be you should be negotiating culture in your marriage. You should be in an intercultural marriage. So yeah, but that does become kind of complicated. I understand that, especially in a country as diverse as Nigeria, where cultures can be very different. You might have something, as a Niger wife, I might have something in common with an Igbo lady who's married to a Hausa man. Because you're constantly negotiating those. But we draw our borders with the Nigerian border. So anybody who is a non-Nigerian national can become a Niger wife. And it's not, there are no expenses involved in that. And then the question about Niger husbands is always super interesting, especially in the current age of social media, because I do see that there are some popular Niger husbands who are on my TikTok and Instagram feeds and things like that, or foreigners married, what I would call Niger husbands, but I don't think they call themselves that, but they're foreigners married to Nigerian women. So I think it's of course gender is a major factor there. Women may need different types of support. They may be more willing to look for that kind of support, and there's a different history of the organizing of women in that way. Also, sometimes it's like how society sees us that we also see ourselves too. So I think that Nigerwives has this very long history of organizing. We've put in so much work into all of that, and I think that that's very important. I don't see Niger husbands have as doing the same things at all, but on Nigerwives' part, one could critique that when Nigerwives were included in the Nigerian constitution and had some rights, that was sexist. And there should be an opening of that. So there has in recent years been some moves to change the language within policy from Niger wife to spouses, foreign spouses of Nigerians. And Nigerwives have also been instrumental in advocating for that and making sure that everyone understands, all of the stakeholders understand that spouse means man or woman.
Okay,
I
sure.
think, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Because of our time, I want to give.
Yeah.
We still have a couple of questions, about three online, but I want to give 30 seconds to Shegun to come in and just ask a live question. Please unmute, please. Please. Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon or good evening. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Just make it snappy, very quickly, sir.
Mine is not a question, it's more of a comment, observation, and then some recommendation to the Niger wife. You see, what happened in 2015 was that the Immigration Act of 2015 came into operation, and there was a lot of major shift in the policy of Nigerian immigration services. And the Niger wife, at the onset, about 2015, you had to pay for your setback, I think $100. But due to your court action, the policy was changed, and the immigration service did not appeal that decision, which was good. Now, since then, the institution of immigration service remained the same, despite the change of personnel due to retirement and all. The institution remains at the head of every command. You have the controller of immigration where you can channel your whatever request you have. And again, I want to advocate that you seize the opportunity of the part of nationality, which is available to Nigerwives. That is nationality by registration. It is quicker, it is easier, the procedure is straightforward. So you can advise your member to go to that, and then they can hold Nigerian passport afterwards. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those observations. I think those are comments that wouldn't like to hold us, but I'd like to read a couple of questions to Ellen, and hopefully you'll be able to take all of them. You can keep them really short when you respond. So two are about children, and then the first one is coming from Sam, who is asking, to what extent does labor market inequality persist among Nigeria wives in Nigeria? And now, is the association responding to these challenges? That's one. Secondly, someone is asking about whether or not you could help to expatiate a bit on the interest of the association in negotiating belonging for the Nigerwives' children in particular. And then I think another very critical question came from Sam again, asking, are Nigerwives from the global north perceived differently by Nigerian institutions and employers than those from global south? And then question from Ellen. Ellen is asking about how giving back, and then I think you talk about the Braille projects, and a lot of welfare activities that you do. But I think this last question is worth reading from Taiwo Gia, who ask, how do you navigate cultural diversity, gender role, and cultural expectations as a wife in Nigeria? So those will be the last set of questions, and please try to touch on them quickly.
Brief. Yeah. So the first question about market inequality, I think, is also related to the second question about the perception of Nigerwives from global north versus those from the global south. For sure, there are some differences in rules in like the policy framework between, of course, you know that there's labor allowances for neighboring countries and things like that. So I don't know. Those definitely will affect people and things like that. But it's not something that Nigerwives is currently focused or working on. Definitely Nigerwives though is like as you remember, I said that one of the aims was to provide support for our members, and Nigerwives you will often see within the networks sharing of information or jobs or vouching for somebody, like, oh, this is a good person, this is a foreigner, you can employ her, and things like that. So there's a lot of I don't know, you probably have a term for that, right? When people give each other jobs, like, due to their diasporic nature and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that concept exists, but you can see that. And in terms of negotiating belonging and the interests of the children, then Nigerwives definitely for younger children provides lots of activities in terms of our, I mentioned that we have our monthly meetings. We also do things like we'll have Christmas parties or birthday parties for children, or organize different activities or events for children and things like that, so that there's that space. And but it's slightly less formal, and it's definitely not institutionalized with any rules or anything like that. And I think I've already spoken about the ways that Nigerwives gives back to society, but basically special needs children is a major focus, and education. A lot of Nigerwives are involved in education, like professionally. So you can see that connection there. And then different branches have their own projects in addition to our national project. So there's WARI has a center for children with disabilities that they run as a national project. They fundraise for it and things like that, or sorry, as a branch project in their area. The same thing in Akwa Ibom. They have their own center where they give back, and it's children focused too. Now, onto this question about cultural diversity, gender role, and cultural expectations as a wife in Nigeria. Ooh, that's a very big question. And I'm not even sure where to start, other than to say that I think that belonging is something that we negotiate all the time. It's a constant in lives. You know, the older I get, the more experiences I have, then I wonder, you know, aren't we all really negotiating intercultural marriages? Unless you marry somebody from your village who has the same traditions as you, who has the same understanding of what to do when someone gets sick, the same understanding of how to organize a funeral. Unless you are completely in an insular community, I think that in 2026, most of us are negotiating that for the rest of our lives with our partners. And of course, gender, I think that gender has some specificities. And yeah, I think it is a big difference between being a Niger wife than being a Niger husband. In terms of, like, on the part of the foreigner, I think that the foreigner is perceived differently. You know, I don't know if I have time to tell you one short story, but as I come back to Canada, regular, I'm Canadian. Then, you know, as I bring my kids, my mixed race kids to Canada, then sometimes I have very strange experiences. Once I entered an ice cream shop with my kids when they were very young here, and we were back here in Canada, and it was like a specialized ice cream shop. There's a special way that they make the ice cream. I was explaining it to my kids, you know, because they had just been outside of Canada for a long time. It's not something that we have in Nigeria. So as I was explaining it to them patiently, then the people behind the counter were looking at me in a very delighted way. I interpreted it as a delighted way. And then they mouthed to me, you know, like they whispered to me so that my children wouldn't hear, you know, are they adopted? You know, like in a very like, how lovely that you've adopted these what they perceived as black children, right? And then so I shook my head like no, you know, and I saw the way that the reaction on their faces. I interpreted it to be sort of like they had put me in this angelic situation, like, oh, what a wonderful white lady who has adopted these black children. They're now looking at me like this white lady has, you know, procreated with a black person, the black man, right? So
Yes.
that puts me in a different light in their eyes, you know. So those kind of experiences, I don't think that men have the same sort of experiences as women, but of course they would definitely have their own experiences. Will they tell us about it? I don't know. That would be very nice.
I think that's a very good place to peg it for this evening. I've really enjoyed myself, and I think about all of our audience members have been consistent in sticking around for this, you know, indicating that it has been a very productive time for everyone. So, in wrapping up, I'd just like to thank our speaker, Dr. Helen Chatburn-Ojehomon, for sharing our experience, for taking us through the journey of Nigerwives, not just as a leader in the community, but also as a mom who has been part of this our Nigerian society for a long time, and I think it's really interesting, and it's kind of like going to shape how we think about diaspora conversation here at our center, but also among our graduate students as well. So on that account, I say thank you so much for joining us, and then thank everyone who has managed to be here. We also thank our partners, who have supported the center, NIDCOM, the Institute of African Studies, and then also the university more generally. We would like to invite you to get to our website to try to see our programs and activities. Also subscribe to our newsletter through the website. You can also check out our new essay series titled Japada Archives, a public data repository dedicated to preserving lived experiences and narratives of return among Nigerians and African diaspora more generally. So the website is being put in the comment section. You can check it out and of course give us feedback. We also have social media platforms that you can join. This video would also be available for those who joined us late and would like to review the conversation that had gone before they came in. It's going to be up on our YouTube channel. Please get there, see, and then also, of course, our previous editions, you can get on there and watch. So, and this brings to the end of our conversation today. Again, thanks, Ellen. Have a great time.
Thanks for the invitation. I really enjoyed the conversation and being here. And keep up the great work. Thanks, Dr. Kudus.
All right. Thanks, Ellen. Bye. And thanks to our very good audience. Bye-bye.